All right, so there are 7 steps to any behavioral design for habit change. And so let's go through the 7 steps. First step is clarifying the aspiration. Second is exploring behavioral options. Third is matching behaviors. 4 is starting tiny. So in other words, you have this big habit or this motivational habit that you want to accomplish. What does it look like to start incrementally? So that way you can kind of build on it and grow. 4, finding a good prompt. So what's prompting you to start that new habit? 6, celebrating successes. And 7, troubleshooting, iterating, and expanding. And so why it's so important to do these is a lot of times we approach habits and we do nothing because there's this spectrum of where we feel motivated to make the change and where the change needs to happen, right? And most times we leap in instead of taking small steps for change and nothing happens. Now, that's not the same for everybody, right? I mean, you probably heard you can take massive action and your life will change instantly, good or bad. But this is for all the different micro habits and decisions that you could lead on to grow in a more appropriate way around any behavior that you're looking to change. So let's dig into these 7 steps, and I'm going to show you a few examples, maps, curves to get you to think about how you build this on your own. And then I will provide you with templates so that you can map your own behaviors and then also match them to where you want to focus, where the most impact is and the least amount of effort. And it's not to say that you shouldn't take any effort, but again, you should be matching your motivation so that you know that the change or the behavioral change will happen. So let's go ahead and talk about those 7 steps. All right. So again, just to recap, we're going to go through clarifying the aspiration, exploring the behavior options, matching the behavior options, starting small, finding a good prompt, celebrating successes. That's huge. We're going to talk about that in length, and then troubleshooting and iterating and expanding. At the end, there's a bonus about how to untangle existing bad habits and how to insert new ones. Okay, so a behavior map. So what does that mean? And so what happens is like we think about the change we want to make, but then we have a tough time thinking about, well, what are the behaviors that are associated with that? Because it's one thing for somebody to ask you what type of goal or outcome you want to reach, but if you don't know the behavior change that's necessary to be able to reach that, then the likelihood of you reaching that is very small. And so a behavior map allows you to map what that aspiration or outcome will look like, and then mapping out the behaviors relating to that. And so, for example, you might pick reduce stress. Okay. What surrounds that in your map would be the behaviors, and it would be behaviors you come up with. This is an example, but yoga, run, meditate, playing music, maybe playing a guitar or something that really calms you. Maybe it's singing, walking your dog, ending your job early. Maybe you have a very stressful job and you want to take 15 20 minutes off early every day. Maybe that will reduce stress. Who knows? More sleep, and then socialize more. Maybe you're really heavy into work or whatever it is that you're into, and you would like to socialize more with others and build that connection. So again, this is kind of what the map will look like to you as a visualization. So you place the aspiration and the outcome in there, and then you map the behaviors. So what does it look like to match those behaviors? And again, this is key because out of everything that I listed there, if yoga is something that you have minimal motivation to and or ability, not much ability to do, or feel like you don't have the ability to do, then why would you put that as an action for changing behavior? Like that's just going to be very difficult for you. It's going to cause friction on a daily basis. And so what this spectrum shows you is what are the high impact behavioral changes I want to make, and what the low impact is it effective to me? Is it minimal impact to me? Versus what will actually provide significant change in my life in a healthy way. And then what's the spectrum look like as far as you can get it done or you can't get it done? So in other words, like, what is the story you're telling yourselves? And I know we talked a lot about thoughts, but if you automatically feel like it's something that you are going to see a challenge with doing, it's probably not a good starting point. All right. And so that's why we map these out. So you're going to create that map visual of the behaviors, and then you're going to place the behaviors on this spectrum, allowing you to actually see, where do you fall in place here? Where do you want to place your behavior as far as the change that you want to make? And what type of impact does that bring to you? Where you want to be, or what your next focus area is what BJ Fogg refers to as the golden behavior area. So in the area where your thoughts naturally say, yes, I can do this behavior, matched with having high impact, meaning like you're going to do this behavior and you're going to start to see immediate results and results for the future as you grow on it. And especially if you start at the tiny habit and then you grow to whatever the massive habit change is going to be. And so this is the arena that you want to be on. So it doesn't mean that all the behaviors that fall outside the circle you don't put any attention to ever. It just means that you're not going to focus on that right now, right? So because maybe you'll grow into changing the other behaviors and they'll slowly start to move towards that top right corner. So what does it mean to start tiny? So again, a lot of us think about, well, I'd like to start exercising more, so I'm going to get a nice pair of running shoes and I'm going to start running a half a mile to a mile a day. Well, you know, that sounds a little bit crazy, right? Because are you going to be able to pick up shoes and just start running when you haven't ran for years? So you want to be able to start small. And it doesn't mean that you don't pick up a habit of running. It just means, what is the tiny version of exercise on your way to run look like? And so here is the map that you saw earlier on in this program that shows you the matching of your motivation, your ability, and then the action line of where you play. And so I wanted to go through the example that we just shared so that you can kind of see how this would map out for you. And so behavior, meditate to reduce stress. So I took one of those behavior bubbles that I had meditate on. And so what does the habit actually look like related to that behavior change? Well, I think meditating for 10 minutes would slowly start to help me reduce stress. But what's the first step? So what's that prompt, right? What's the prompt look like? Well, it might be downloading a meditation app. It might be getting a meditation pillow out. It might be setting yourself in a dark room, like turning the lights off. You know, you're setting yourself up for success or from minimized distractions. And then what does it look like to take it to a tiny fashion? So when you want to make the meditation for 10 minutes a reality, a tiny step towards that would be just meditate with 3 breaths. Because if you're not doing any meditation today, like 3 breaths is still a good step, even though it sounds really small. And so think about it from that perspective when you're going through your behaviors is, how can you start small? And even if that first day you do 3 breaths, well, maybe the next day you're like, well, that was easy. Let's do 10. Then let's do 20. Let's do 1 minute. And so you're going to slowly grow into that habit. And before you know it, you're going to wake up every day and you're going to have the app ready to go and you're going to be ready to meditate for 10 minutes. Right. And so think about how you can make those tiny changes. So what does a prompt recipe look like? And so within the behavioral change, and we talked about this early on, where behavior equals ability, motivation, and prompt, the key is, what is that trigger, right? What's that prompt that's actually going to get you to make that behavioral change? And so here is a recipe. And again, we're going to provide you templates to be able to do this, to understand what the prompt is leading to your behavior change or your action. And so here's an example. After I wake up, I will open my meditation app, right? After I open my work laptop, I will turn on music. And so if you can recall, one of the bubbles I had was, playing music or listening to music, right? And so if I had a calming music lined up, then maybe that would make work less stressful for me. And so what's the prompt for you, right? One thing I want to call out here too is remembering the ABC, the anchor moment, the tiny behavior, and the celebration, because The anchor moment is what is going to trigger you to make that habit change happen, right? What's the tiny behavior that you're going to slot in there for change, and then making sure to celebrate it. And we're going to dive in more to celebration. So oftentimes when we accomplish something, we just move on to the next task. Whether we have so much on our mind to do, we have a busy mind, we're thinking about all the tasks we need to get done within a given day, year, month, whatever it is, we always, or most times, a majority of us will fail to celebrate. And we need to celebrate not only the big accomplishments, but the small wins. We need to celebrate all of them. And so why does this matter? Well, research has actually proven that emotions create habits. So how you feel about the changes or the habits you have in your life actually helps you refine in a strong habit, and it makes you actually emotionally attached towards that habit, whether it's a bad habit or a good habit. If it's a bad habit, then hopefully you can push the emotions towards replacing that, and we'll get into that later. So here's what the spectrum really looks like. If there's no emotion tied to it, therefore you're not celebrating any change relating to just those tiny micro movements in the habit change, then it doesn't become automatic, because a habit routinely is something that you get to a point of doing without even thinking about it. Meaning, I'm just going to get up in the morning, and as soon as I come downstairs, I'm going to turn the lights off and I'm going to pop open my app and I'm going to meditate. And I'm not even going to think about it. It's going to be part of my routine, right? And so once you get to that point, great, like you've refined or you built a strong habit. But most times we are kind of teetering. We're on it's not automatic yet. We're deliberating on whether or not it's a habit we're doing, meaning we've tried meditation. Maybe we didn't celebrate that tiny change, the 3 breaths, the 10 breaths, now up to the 5 minutes. And we're starting to feel like it's something that we're just going to let go, right? We're deliberating on it. And so this is where you leverage emotions, and you can do that by celebrating. So as silly as it might sound, think about the moment that you came down, you turn the light off, celebrate it. Hey, I remembered the prompt to come down and turn the light off. I remembered the prompt to open up my meditation app. I remembered to breathe for 3 seconds or take 3 breaths or whatever. And so celebrate all those micro moments that you can, and it will slowly start to build in that strong emotional footprint relating to your habit, and it will slowly become automatic. So how can we grow our habit? And so traditionally, like when you think about a habit, the best habits we have are related to skills that we've either developed over time, or maybe it's something that we're in the process of practicing it. So if you're somebody that always eats healthy, it's probably because you have practiced eating healthy, you spend time learning about eating healthy, you follow people that talk about eating healthy foods, nutrients, everything, exercise. Like most times when you get to those type of routines and habits, it's because you've built in a skill set, like a learning developed skill set. And so what does that really look like? So behavior crafting, right? And so what I'm going to show you here, is when you think about behavior crafting, really that's skills related to selecting and adjusting habits that you want in your life. So in other words, how can you craft behavior changes relating to things that you care about? And yes, there are going to be things that you want to put in your life that you don't do today, and maybe you care, maybe you don't. Maybe exercising is something that you just hate, like the thought of running and lifting weights or whatever just is not your thing, but you know that exercising is good for your brain, right? It's good for your blood flow. It's good for your movement, your heart. And so what could you craft that actually relates to you in exercise? Maybe that's walking with a friend, right? And so what does that look like to craft your own behavioral change around that? Self-insight, understanding your own preferences and strengths and aspirations. What motivates you? You know, what's the difference between what you really want and what you should do, and trying to find that gap and close in on that gap. And I think that happens when you actually know who you are, because it's never really about, you know, seeing somebody else doing something. Let's say you're riding the bus and you look out the window and somebody's riding their bike and you're like, well, I used to ride a bike. And so I'm just going to go out and I'm going to get a nice bike and I'm going to start bike riding. Well, maybe, but most times, like, it should match where you are. Like, what do you care about, right? What are your preferences? What are your strengths? What do you enjoy doing? Maybe you like doing jumping jacks. I don't know, but just it's about understanding your own self insight. All right, process. So what does process skills mean? Well, the ability to adjust to the dynamic nature of life in order to strengthen and grow your own habits. And so, in other words, what processes within your day can you build in that just feel seamless? Like, how can you make it so dynamic that it fits your own life where you actually look forward to doing it? So, in other words, if I wanted to start a meditation practice, and I said I would need a dark room, quiet room, meditation app, and meditate for 10 minutes. And yet I place myself in the living room and the kids are going to wake up like any minute now. They're early risers and it's going to be distracting. All of a sudden, like the environment of meditation is really not conducive to get that done. Well, then you really haven't built in a good process, right? You haven't designed the right environment for one, but your process is due to fail. And so thinking about how you can leverage your process skills. And then context. So recognizing and adjusting any factors. And so we kind of alluded to this already, but what, people, places, those type of things actually play into behavioral change. Do you need an accountability partner? Do you need somebody to kind of jump in and help influence you? Do you need to recognize what you need to take care of within your habit? And so how do you place context on making that change, and who plays context in placing that change? Maybe it's just you. Maybe it's your significant other, maybe it's your kids, or maybe it's a coach. But how can you place yourself in the context and the environments to make that conducive for you? And then lastly, mindset. So we dug a lot of this with thoughts and ants and everything, but if you don't have the right attitude or approach, then the perception of change or the way that you want to change in the world is going to be very challenging, right? And so making sure that you set yourself up for success by having the right mindset for change is huge. And one thing we already talked about that help with that is the celebration, right? I mean, as silly as it is, but if you celebrate every ounce of change and success and everything that you do, then that helps you reframe in that mindset. And so all of these things kind of build on each other, but this is a way that you can really hone in on growing those skills related to your habits. Okay. So bonus section. And so one thing that we really wanted to cover here in this is we understand that people have what they consider to be bad habits, right? Either it's a bad habit because it's bad for your health, or it's a bad habit because it's leading towards behaviors that aren't great, maybe relationships or whatever that is. And so we didn't want to discount that. And so what does it actually look like to untangle a bad habit and actually replace it with a new, going through all the different steps that we talked about in growing new habits? And so what does that look like? Well, first you need to identify, what do you want to stop doing today? And really it's as simple as going back to that map and putting that stop bubble right in the middle, and then all the behaviors relating to that particular behavior or that habit change that you want to make, right? Next, prompt. If it's something that you don't want to do anymore, what prompts you to do that behavior today? And how might you actually change that prompt and insert a new habit? Or catch yourself in that prompt and stop doing that habit. So a prompt would actually be one of the critical parts in untangling a bad habit, right? Because sometimes our motivations are fleeting towards bad habits even. And so if you lean on changing regarding your motivations to do something, sometimes it fails. So lean on that prompt, especially for untangling a bad habit, and figure out a place where you can kind of insert a new. Decrease your ability. So if you're somebody that just loves sweets, like you eat sugary foods all day, every day, and that it's not conducive, and even if you wanted to just minimize it, right? One thing you could do is decrease your ability to access it. So if it's just sitting on the counter in an easy place for you, maybe it's on your desk at work, like If it's very easy for you to get to, more than likely you're going to still grab it. But if it's not, then you're decreasing the ability and therefore causing friction, or you're basically placing obstacles for you to actually do it. So think about that. Like, what if you took that candy jar or whatever and you took it off the counter and you put it in the top cupboard way up in your kitchen, or you didn't bring it to work, right? Because it's not on your desk. Even if you crave it, it's not there. So how could you decrease the ability? Lower the motivation. How can you position yourself to really think about what would it look like to not do that habit? What would it look like to not eat that sugar? How would you feel? Have you ever tested it? What if you gave up sugar for a day or two? Like, did you feel better? Would that highly motivate you? And so lower the motivation to do that habit and raise the motivation towards where you want to be. Like, go back to that behavior map towards where you of things that you want to get to, and insert that and slowly decrease the motivation to do your poor habit. And then lastly, we've talked about this week throughout, but insert that new habit, right? So again, if it's eat less sugary foods, what would it look like to actually place foods that might actually have a good palate taste, but are healthy? Like, instead of having a candy bar there, what if you put blueberries and apples, or almonds, or even if you had almonds and raisins, right? Raisins have a high taste palate, right? So, and again, I'm not suggesting which foods you should eat, but slow, tiny changes like that will be incrementally significant towards where you want to be. And so think about how you can slide in there and replace that new habit. All right. So now we've done a deep dive into habits. What I'm going to do is share those templates with you so you can go through all of those steps yourself to start to break down what behavior changes you want to make, how you can map it, how you can match it to your motivation, how you can figure out your prompts, how you can celebrate it, and then how you can grow it. And then if there are bad habits that you have, how you can insert the new. And so hope you enjoyed that lesson on habits. It's so crucial, and really in anything that you do. If you think about it as you go throughout your days, we have all these thoughts and decisions and habits that we do. And so if you can really get in there and master that, you have an ability to make change on a daily basis. So it's quite exciting stuff. So what we will do is we will now position into developing and executing a plan. So that way you can take what you've learned about behavior change, take some of the habits that you're hoping to make, and then let's put that on an actual plan. Let's put that on a daily execution plan. And you're going to learn a little bit about what a one-page miracle is and start to execute that on a daily basis.